position on a far from ideal track. Very greasy conditions for this Formula Ford heat. 10 laps. There's the young Welshman on the front row, shared with Jonathan McGall, another youngster. He's from Northern Ireland. So we have a Welshman from Northern Ireland. On the second row, there is Chris Creswell, a local from Brands Hatch area, and Finnish driver Sato. They're away from the grid, weaving and ducking at the back up to Paddock Bend for the first of this 10-lap race, and it's Jonathan McGall from the outside, slightly drier line that's got the best start, leads into Paddock Corner. The pack behind a little nudge in midfield there, but everybody's safely through as McGall leads up to Druids. So McGall still holds head sway ahead of Westwood. The pack all getting round. Very, very greasy. There's beginning to be a little bit of a dry line. You can actually see the dry line there with a bit more grip, but any overtaking manoeuvre on the slightly wetter track makes for tricky conditions. So now, through into the lead has gone Julian Westwood. McGall now demoted to second, so Westwood in the lead. Meanwhile, at the inside there, McGall looks like he's doing another place there to the young Finn, Mika Sato. Streaming through clearways. Everybody's safely through, wanted to progress to the next round of this Formula Ford Festival. And it's Julian Westwood, the young Welshman, out front. McGall now back into second place with Finn Sato in third. All sorts of squabbling through the back of there, very greasy off the line, but still up front. It's being very sensible. They know that getting through to the next round of this competition is the most important thing. The grid positions and a spin there in the middle of Druids. That was just where it was very greasy. Luckily he wasn't hit by anybody, and he's getting back onto the track to fight another day. Oh, they're getting bottom bend there. Very greasy, spins galore, but still out front. Westwood holds sway from McGall and Sato. A Frenchman up into fourth now is Arnaud Trevisiol. Everybody taking it as easy as possible through clearways out onto top straight, where the leaders are already finishing their second lap, with Westwood still out front. Jonathan McGall now beginning to mount a challenge. He's pulling away slightly from Mika Sato, the Finnish driver, who's in third in the yellow Van Diemen, but it's out front Julian Westwood leading from McGall. A battle beginning to warm up for fourth place between Trevisiol, the Frenchman, and Pedro Chaves, who was the 86 Portuguese champion, who's now racing over this country. So Westwood now under pressure from McGall. McGall in the distinctive Irish car, the Mondial chassis, chasing Westwood's Van Diemen, which is by far the most common car now in Formula Ford racing, but by no means winning every race. So Julian Westwood now holding sway of Jonathan McGall. There, McGall definitely quicker through Paddock Hill Corner. That's the place he's closest, and you have to watch up at Druids. Also very hectic dice building up for fourth place behind these two. So Westwood there holding sway, with the dice there for fourth between, on the inside, Trevisiol, the Frenchman, who we haven't seen much racing over in England, and Pedro Chaves, who was the Portuguese champion, as I've said, in 86, but has spent a season over here racing in the British Championship, which is the way so many of the foreign drivers go. So still very little change there. There we see Chaves, but behind him he's getting a bit of a push on. So Chaves having to look both ahead of him to overtake and in his mirrors for those behind him. Again, Westwood there. Jonathan McGall there, it's his closest position. Jonathan knows he's not under pressure to overtake here. He's having a look up the inside now for Druids. He's half there. Whether he'll get through, he's looking. Westwood realising it was a bit too late to close the door, and there was a very clean and sensible overtaking manoeuvre that we probably won't see later in the competition. But at that stage, Westwood was happy to let McGall through. He had the line on him, and now we have a new leader getting on to halfway through this heat. spinning again, another rotation there. And the leader's gone there. We just caught a glimpse of McGall spinning. Westwood missed him, but Miko Sato's gone through into the lead, but McGall has survived. All wheels appear to be pointing in the right direction. He should qualify. There's the first 13 will go through to the quarterfinals of each of these heats. And McGall now will be cursing himself having thrown away that lead which he'd only just got. So halfway through, the Finn, Mika Sato is now leading from Julian Westwood, the young Welshman, who will be hopefully determined not to see another mistake like that right in front of him. Still very, very greasy. Conditions like this, the problems in Formula 4, they all run a standard racing tyre, which is a set tyre for everybody. But on these conditions, there's very little grip, there's a lot of sliding of these cars, and it's much, much harder to really have close competitive racing that we've seen so much, which is the hallmark really of Formula Ford racing. And these greasy conditions, not far from ideal for these cars. There, Sato having a bit of a twitch at the position where McGall spun last time, and Westwood looking to another rotation spinner at Druids there. So Sato now under pressure from Julian Westwood. Westwood with nobody behind him. He will be wanting to get past Sato as soon as possible to try and ease out a bit of a lead to get that win in the heat. He's trying to go a long way around the outside, and he's holding on. A very brave move that's paid off, and very nice. Julian Westwood really is a fast improving driver. He's still in his early 20s, very young, but he's been one of the front runners. He's actually 5th in this year's British champion. So Julian Westwood, one name for the future. Charvet now up to 3rd. So yellow flags denoting another spinner, but our leaders have got safely through. So it's Westwood from Sato and Charvet. The dice there hotting up again for 4th place. This time it's Treviziol holding off young Richard Reynolds, who was 2nd in the junior championship. So he's one of the junior boys moving up into the senior level at the moment. Parked in the foreground there on the top straight is Kenny Brack, the Swedish driver, which is a great shame. He's again been racing over in Britain this year, but he's out of the Formula Ford Festival. So the leader's looking safe and easing through. Westwood not pulling away that quickly from Sato. Sato really doing very, very well for this first visit to Brands Hatch. So Westwood holding sway up front. Everybody taking it easy. Very, very good back bar. We've seen him spin a couple of times in this race so far, and he's certainly making sure he doesn't take off the back markers. That's very good driving, really. He obviously wants to try and qualify. If only 13 cars finish, then Piers Muir will qualify. So he's being sensible, keeping out of the way of any trouble. And certainly not disturbing the leaders, who now move on. Charvet now safe in 3rd. There we see him, a former Portuguese champion. So Charvet 3rd, but now Richard Reynolds has in fact moved up into that 4th place. He's got past, there we see him just about to lap the back marker. He's got past the Frenchman Treviziol, and certainly Reynolds, who was 9th on the grid, has moved up very impressively and very steadily in this heat. He's now hoped to maybe get Charvet in the next 2 laps, which will help that grid position. McGall now has recovered to about 6th, so he also won't be too far down the grid in his quarter-final. But Westwood's not pulling away at all from Sato. He's got to be careful here that Sato doesn't slip up the inside. But very, very greasy. You can see the cars, the drivers trying to get the traction down onto the track, the back twitching away as the wheels spin, but Westwood, starting the last lap in the lead, looks fairly safe and steady. Chavez has closed in 3rd place and is probably safe from Richard Reynolds' charge, and certainly Chavez looks like he fancies another place before the end of this lap. Westwood defending the inside line at Druids. There, Chavez closing in on the leading pair, and Richard Reynolds a tantalising distance back in 4th place. There, all Westwood leaving a little bit of an inch. Sato, I don't think, is really the place to overtake, but it's pushed Westwood wide and could well reap dividends. Westwood there was almost playing it too safe, and Sato slipped through to lead this heat, which is going to give him the better position on the grid for the quarter-final. And it's going to be the Finn, Mika Sato, that is going to win this heat from Westwood, Chavez, Richard Reynolds, Treviziol and Jonathan McGould did recover to a good 6th place. On pole position for his heat, the most experienced man in the field today, David Coyne, the Tredair Swift. He's done Formula Ford 2000 and Formula 3, but this year he has done some of the Formula Ford races, got 6th place in the British Championship, but he's certainly the favoured, most experienced man to win the festival. Beside him, Andrew Guy Johnson, one of the young pretenders. He's leading the Brands Hatch Championship at the moment, based at this circuit alone, and he's certainly matching Coyne up to paddock, but Coyne has got the inside line, and he looks like he's going to be holding the lead. Around the outside, Colin Lees tries a very brave and bold move, but everybody's safely through paddock and up to Druids Hill Bend, where Coyne leads. Still conditions very, very greasy indeed. The dry line is beginning to appear more and more, but still offline it's very, very greasy. So Coyne already pulling away, with Andrew Guy Johnson now having his mirrors full of Carl Frahm, a young Belgian, second in the Belgian Championship there, now lying 3rd in his Van Diep. And up to 4th is a very good Mark Salter, another Brands Hatch regular. And again, everybody easing through, a bit of a twitch up the inside midfield. Scrambling for grip offline, these Formula Fords and their skinny tyres, but Coyne, very impressive, pulling away in his heat as much as Eddie Irvine did in an earlier heat. And there Frahm through into 2nd place from Guy Johnson, who rather left the door open there, and he might regret that, but Frahm certainly looking one of the most impressive of the foreigners arriving for the festival. So everybody's still getting safely through Druids, sensibly wishing to proceed to the quarter-final, but Coyne is just streaking away at the front. Carl Frahm looks very good. He's also pulling away very slightly from Andrew Guy Johnson, which is a surprise. Guy Johnson, really the local specialist, who is leading the championship. But there you see a bit of a slide at Surtees, and all of a sudden he's having to look in his mirrors at Mark Salter, and the leaders are getting away. In the lead. Frahm 2nd, Guy Johnson now safe-ish 3rd. There's a bit of a hectic battle for 4th there between Salter and Colin Lees in the Mondial. All safely through paddock and going up the hill. Behind Colin Lees is the French Championship contender Jean-Luc Palisse, who was actually 2nd in the French Championship. So a fair old scrap here from 4th, 5th, 6th, but Colin Lees now is the proud owner of 4th place. He's made a move forward, whereas Mark Salter's been bumped back to 6th, and in fact it's Jean-Luc Palisse is the man who has popped into 5th. So there, Guy Johnson now under pressure from Colin Lees. 5th place Jean-Luc Palisse, then 6th Salter. There we have Salter going out onto top straight, being pressured from behind. Coyne well in the lead. Carl Frahm equally placed in 2nd, but Colin Lees diving up the inside of Guy Johnson. Guy Johnson is, from being a hard contender at the front, is getting pushed back and back. It could well be that these greasy conditions do not suit his Quest chassis. Certainly in the dry conditions, he's one of the quickest drivers around this circuit, but now he's having trouble from Jean-Luc Palisse, the French driver, 2nd in the French Championship, who's now pushing very hard to take that 4th place off Guy Johnson. Coyne, Frahm, Lees, then Guy Johnson still holding that 4th place from Palisse. Palisse looking up the inside, a very late dive, but Guy Johnson countered that one. Meanwhile, coming up to 6th is Miles Johnson. Miles Johnson, an impressive Yorkshireman who won the Northern Alton Park Circuit Championship this year. So he's not used to Brands Hatch, but he's certainly surging forward now. Guy Johnson still holding that gap, but David Coyne well safe up front. There's the battle. Colin Lee's now, but there we have the Frenchman is through. So Andrew Guy Johnson moves down another place to 5th now. So Colin Lee's there in 3rd. 4th is now the Frenchman Jean-Luc Pallis. 5th, Andrew Guy Johnson from 2nd on the grid. Obviously not happy in these greasy conditions. The leading 2 well ahead. 3rd Lees, 4th the Frenchman, 5th Andrew Guy Johnson, and in 6th place now Miles Johnson, the Northern champion, who's the next one queuing up to overtake a very unhappy Andrew Guy Johnson. So the battle really in the back is Guy Johnson, who's next to get by. It's Miles Johnson right in the slipstream as they go up to paddock there. Guy Johnson looks down the inside and through he goes. So Andrew Guy Johnson goes back another place to 6th. In fact, the dry lining that was appearing is beginning to get covered now. There's a little bit of drizzle coming down. It's a very drizzly morning at Brands Hatch, and the track now unfortunately getting a bit wetter. But Lees ahead. Jean-Luc Pallis there in 4th, looking to move towards Colin Lees, the Irishman. But this lead out front for Formula Ford standards just shows how in these tricky conditions, if your car is set more for the dry than the wet, and like Andrew Guy Johnson's I should imagine is, you can quickly fall back there to 6th place. Miles Johnson is also, but Miles Johnson now looking to take the Frenchman, and very neatly, in the same manner as he dispatched to Andrew Guy Johnson the lap before. That was slipstreaming up the straight to paddock, snapped inside and went through it. I think Miles Johnson fancies 3rd place off Lees as well. So Colin Lees will have to look out, but in the background, poor Andrew Guy Johnson has just lost another place and has been pushed down to 7th, it must be now, by Pedro Pereira. Coyne well clear, Fram equally safe in 2nd, but now the battle really is for 3rd. Miles Johnson now will be thinking about those overtaking manoeuvres at paddock on the previous 2 laps. He'll try and get through clearways here as neatly as possible, moving now right into Colin Lees' gearbox. He's probably too far behind, in fact, and a little bit of a slip and a slide, and instead of him moving forward, he's got a lot of trouble there from the Frenchman looking to get his nose up the inside. And in fact, the Pedro Pereira is also having a look to squabble the whole lot up. So a real gaggle now for 4th place at good Formula Ford dice. So the Portuguese Pereira now on the back of the bunch, and almost a nose cone nudge into the gearbox from the Frenchman to the Yorkshireman there. But Miles Johnson's charge forward seems to have slightly eased at the moment. Perhaps the drizzle that's coming down is causing him to have more problems, but certainly the gaggle at the back. Pereira there, I think, coming through in the background to demote the Frenchman, in fact. So Miles Johnson, meanwhile, dives up the inside for 3rd place on Colin Lees at clearways, whereas Pereira has just done the Frenchman, and the Frenchman now coming back on the inside of the Portuguese. So Pereira there briefly held 5th spot before the Frenchman challenged back through, but Miles Johnson it is who has moved through to 3rd. 4th Colin Lees, 5th the French, 6th Pereira the Portuguese. And a very unhappy 7th for Andrew Guy Johnson, now moving back from the pack, but there's some weaving and ducking, diving up to Druids. There's a couple of laps left to go. Very slippery there, the Portuguese. Oh, and there's nudges, and that's a great shame for Colin Lees and for Pereira there, the Portuguese. They're tangled together. Hopefully they'll both qualify for the quarterfinals. They should finish in the top 13, but there was a bit of a nudge there, and that was a shame. Oh, and in fact there we've got a problem there. That's Pereira. Obviously the steering arm had been broken in that tap up at Druids, and that really was a great shame because he was 13th on the grid. He'd moved up very well in this race to look like possibly a 5th or even a 4th place finish, and now he's out. On the last lap though, David Coyne, very supreme and confident race. We haven't seen much of the Tread Air Swift, but there it is. And obviously everybody expected Coyne to win this heat and go forward, and really the clash between the very experienced David Coyne and the British champion Eddie Irvine is really the most eagerly anticipated clash. But Coyne stomping clear on this heat. The ragged battle for 4th, 5th and 6th unfortunately dissolved as we saw, but the rain now coming down harder and harder. The dry line virtually disappeared as Coyne comes up to clear ways for the last time for an accomplished heat victory. So David Coyne adds yet another Formula Ford victory to his long, long list of past successes. Success for the Swift car. In second place, an equally impressive race really from Carl Frahm. We haven't seen much of him. Third in the Belgium series there. He takes second, having pulled well clear of the madding crowd, which Miles Johnson comes a good third. Fourth, the Frenchman. Fifth, Andrew Guy Johnson. So back at Druids, that spin which spoilt that wonderful dice we had. Everybody recovered except Pereira, but we see here Colin leads the battle for fourth. The Frenchman tries to dive inside Lees, gets a bump from the Portuguese. The Frenchman hits the Irishman spins, and the poor Pereira loses there. You can see the impact of the front right wheel, which probably caused that steering arm to break, as we saw later.